You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. By going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, you can make this possible. Hurricane Dorian has shifted its sights to Florida while it, of course, blasted the Bahamas. Folks, watch this video here. It is stunning. The storm, which hit the northern Bahamas as one of the strongest Atlantic hurricanes on record, has wreaked havoc on the islands for more than 2 days with unrelenting rain and wind. 5 people have been killed, as we know so far. Bahamian Prime Minister Hubert Minnis was at a news conference and talked about how devastating this has been on the country.
This is probably the most saddened and worst day of my life to address the Bahamian people. And I just want to say that as a physician, I've been trained to withstand many things, but never anything like this. We're facing a hurricane Dorian, one that we've never seen in the history of Bahamas. Many had remained behind, and still there are individuals within the West End area who still refuse to leave. I can only say to them that I hope this is not the last time they would hear my voice, and may God be with them. I can say that the Marsh Harbor area of Abaco, parts of it is already underwater, and some areas you cannot tell the difference as to the beginning of the street versus where the ocean begins. And they've not yet been hit by the brunt of the storm.
All right, folks, this is a video a friend sent me. This is Freeport. This is the airport terminal. This is the terminal at the Freeport, Bahamas airport. Completely gutted and destroyed. Again, it is devastation. A lot of our people, a lot of our folks, and understand, we have a huge number of people who from the Bahamas who watch Roland Martin Unfiltered. I was there just a couple of months ago, and it is shocking to see what happened there. What can we expect now? Let's go to the Weather Channel meteorologist, Paul Goodloe. He joins us right now. Paul, glad to have you here. We've seen that video in the Bahamas there. Nassau, not as they had rain and flooding, but of course, some of the other islands, I mean, just devastation. One of those islands, 70% underwater.
Yeah, so Nassau was about 120 miles away from the center of Hurricane Dorian when it was at its peak intensity, 185 mile per hour sustained winds. That's basically tied for the second strongest hurricane ever in the Atlantic Basin and the strongest hurricane ever to move across any area there in the Bahamas. So this is something that we have never seen before in our lifetime, for sure, definitely lifetime of the nation of the Bahamas as well. Then that was the Abacos, Great Abacos. The northern Bahamas were decimated. Then it moved on towards Grand Bahama Island, and Freeport never got the actual eye of the hurricane, but they got close to the eye wall. And then the storm just stalled. So the island of Grand Bahama and Freeport, hours upon hours, not like 5 or 6 or 8. We're talking like 24 hours or even more than that of this thing moving basically 4 or 5 miles for more than a day and a half. And that's just devastating to that chain. Now, finally, the good news is it's now moving away from Bahamas, and as it's safer, we can find out the true devastation. I know at least 5 people lost their lives. My fear is that number can go up by a multiple 4 or 5 or more.
So, Paul, it was sort of like the hurricane when it just sat on top of Houston and just kept dropping rain and it didn't move.
Exactly, Harvey, 2 years ago, and we're seeing that that pattern, unfortunately, with our changing climate. We have a lot more energy in the atmosphere, which leads to basically blocking ridges. So storms tend to move from west to east across the country, but when we have basically extra fuel making more stubborn patterns, it prevents things from moving easily. So these hurricanes are basically heat engines. They're driven by the fact that the equator area, the tropics, gets more energy than the northern areas, or the poles, I should say. So that energy has to move from the tropical regions and then towards the poles, north and southward, depending on the hemisphere. And that's just how our atmosphere and our planet is made up, with the tilt of the Earth and all that. So when you have these blocking patterns, well, these things can't move as quickly or as efficiently as they have in the past, because they're coming up against things and they just kind of slow down. Harvey, the incredible thing with Harvey, a couple of years ago, we looked at some of the models talking about, oh, you can see 20, 30 inches. And we're like, wow, that's kind of up there. And we saw twice that amount of rain, record-setting in Houston. Never, ever have we seen that much rain from a hurricane ever in the U.S. in terms of history of us. But we're seeing this now 2 years later, a stalled-out hurricane damaging. And the last time I can remember a hurricane song like that was Hurricane Wilma over the Yucatan of Mexico, Cancun, Cozumel. Those beaches have never fully recovered from more than a day of that hurricane, Cat 4, wow, just sitting there churning over there. Wow. If you've ever been to Cancun, the beaches are nothing compared to they were 15 years ago. That's all because of Hurricane Wilma.
Paul, you're in Miami right now?
No, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. You see part of the harbor behind me. We're getting Dorian's closest movement as we head towards Thursday. But starting tomorrow, we'll start seeing and feeling more winds. We'll start here dealing with the storm surge. Charleston, a lot of history. A lot of history with a lot of slave history in this area. History that kind of built this country, starting here in the oldest city in South Carolina. But this is called the Low Country. It's called the Low Country for a reason. You see behind me, you don't see much relief here. It's flat as the eye can see. Right. And that's the problem. Charleston's surrounded by the harbor and also fed by two rivers on the other two sides. So when the storm surge comes in from the Atlantic, it kind of blocks the rivers from exiting out toward the Atlantic. But then if you have heavy rain, which unfortunately is also forecast, then the heavy rain swells the rivers. They push towards the Atlantic. Dorian, with its surge, pushes up and back into the harbor. The rivers meet. The water can't fully go backwards. It goes up and over the land. So we could be dealing with a storm surge 4 to 7 feet on top of high tide. It's already a 5-foot tidal range here between high and low tide. We could see maybe maybe a 10-foot swing. And then you add maybe a couple more feet for surge. So we're going to flood, hands down. The question mark is how much rain do we get, which takes us even into that catastrophic range here. We're hoping the dry air keeps coming in from the mainland of the southeast, and then that starts to eat away the western side of the hurricane. And that's the good news. We're on the western side. We're on the eastern side of the high wall. We'd have a lot more water push back into the harbor, back into the rivers as well.
All right, then. Well, certainly we want our folks in South Carolina, North Carolina to be safe as well. Paul, Goodloe with the Weather Channel. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Sure thing.
Let's now go to Jacqueline Charles. She's the Caribbean correspondent for the Miami Herald. Jacqueline, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Your sense of how the Caribbean, namely the Bahamas, has been devastated by Dorian.
This is certainly the most powerful hurricane that the Bahamas has endured, and they are devastated indeed. Earlier today, the Bahamas Prime Minister, Dr. Hubert Minnis, led a reconnaissance flight over the Abacos. They're still waiting for the all clear to see what's going on in Grand Bahama. I can tell you I have family in the Bahamas. In fact, they're in Freeport, and we haven't been able to get any information from them. But from the reports that we're hearing, I mean, everything is underwater. People were literally cutting holes in their ceilings and stranded there. They're using jet skis and boats to get people out. And in some cases, when people got to shelter, they had to leave that shelter because it started to take on water. As the Prime Minister said, we build pretty, good houses in the Bahamas, enough to withstand 150 miles per hour winds. But when you have a storm like Dorian, which was packing 165 miles per hour winds and bringing in storm surges of 23 feet, and in some cases waves of 30 feet, the devastation is certainly going to be there. But we need to wait and see to what extent and how much it's going to cost to rebuild this island chain.
We talk about that particular cost there. Also, we're showing some other video right now on social media. Folks, go to my iPad. You can get a sense of the devastation there. Jacqueline, it's not like, I mean, look, for the Bahamas, look, a significant amount of their budget is tourism. And so we saw this happen with St. Thomas. We saw this happen with the previous hurricanes, how tourism is greatly impacted. So when this happens, folks don't come to the islands, don't come to the country. They lose that revenue, makes it harder for them to also rebuild.
You're right. I mean, there are 700 islands in the Bahamas, right? But the ironic thing in all of this is the islands that we are seeing that are heavily impacted are the islands that are the tourist draw. Even in New Providence, Nassau, the capital. I mean, people woke up yesterday and they were flooded out of their homes because the waters were rising there. Freeport, which is low-lying, has always struggled. And just as the moment where it seems to be getting back and getting the tourism back, they get hit by this devastating storm. So it's going to take a lot to rebuild the Bahamas. But the Prime Minister said yesterday that they are committed to doing it, and they are going to, make sure that they build back better. And we'll have to see.
Also, they announced and if you have the information, an official link if folks want to support. Do you actually have that with you? I saw it on Twitter. I had retweeted it in terms of where folks can actually help.
I don't have the official link, but at MiamiHerald.com, we actually have been writing stories about the relief effort. And I know that the Bahamian officials said that they were going to put something out today because they want to make sure that when you're donating, that you're donating to reputable, charitable organizations. And they want to make sure that the stuff that's being donated are things that are needed and that it reaches. So I know everybody's anxious to help, but I would also just sort of wait a day or two because they really need to start to do some sort of assessment. But there are efforts that are taking place to organize relief efforts. If anybody is in the South Florida area, all of the Miami-Dade fire rescue stations, I believe, are drop-off points. Also, some of the airports, the private airports, Opelika Executive Airport in Fort Lauderdale, there are planes that are lined up, ready to go and take supplies, but they're just waiting for the all clear. So I think we just need to wait. I've covered this issue like with Haiti, and everybody wants to give stuff, and sometimes, we saw with Haiti and Puerto Rico, it just stayed at the port. So I think we just need to wait for some official word from the Bahamian authorities and then follow their lead.
You're right. And folks, here we go to my iPad. We have up right now the Miami Herald story which says the Bahamas needs help following Hurricane Dorian. Here's how you can donate. And so if you actually go to, we're going to push this link out on social media so you can be able to see it. And so there are a number of entities right here that they have on their website where you can actually give to support what's happening there. And I'll find that tweet that they sent out with the government of the Bahamas sent it out as well. And so for the rest of this week, we'll also be having folks from the Bahamas right here on the show. I've been in contact with government officials there as well because, again, as I said, there are a lot of supporters of this show in the Bahamas, and we want to do all we can to help them. Jacqueline Charles, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
All right, folks. And so, again, we'll have the information for you on how you can help the folks there in the Bahamas. Look, those are our people. They look like us. We want to make sure that they have our support as well. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, this Friday, if you're going to be in Atlanta, I'll be there. You don't want to miss me at the Ride, Money, and Motion Conference at the Loudermilk Center, moderating a panel about access and ownership sponsored by Bangi, the only African-American-owned publicly traded cannabis organization in the world. I'll be on the panel. Matthew Knowles, Bonita Money, Ryan Mack, and the whole Bangi family will be front and center discussing entry into the multi-billion-dollar and growing cannabis industry and how you can become a distributor, shareholder, or cannabis landlord. If you're interested in making money in this booming industry, then I promise you don't want to miss this. Our panel is going to be at 2:30, but for a full list of other panels, activations, and tickets, please visit ride.rollingout.com. Ride.rollingout.com. And so you don't want to miss it again. As this Friday in Atlanta, and you certainly don't want to miss it. I want you guys to be there because why? Everybody keeps talking about expungement, which is critically important, but this is a $340 billion global industry, and black folks should be on the front end of making money when it comes to cannabis, as opposed to us having to spend money because our people were thrown in jail for selling it. And so, again, we will certainly want to have you guys at that. And so that's taking place again this Friday in Atlanta. So please don't miss it. All right, folks. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.